Bien, ahora vamos a escuchar la ponencia Crear puentes culturales entre los sures para humanizar las migraciones. No existe crisis de inmigración global, a cargo de acá Sebastien Kouacou. Acá Sebastien Kouacou es estudiante de doctorado en el Departamento de Lengua y Cultura de la Universidad de Western Ontario, Canadá. Es especialista en estudios hispánicos, migraciones y relaciones étnicas. Hizo una licenciatura y una maestría en lenguas extranjeras, literatura, lingüística, civilización y cultura del mundo hispánico en la Universidad de Kouacou y luego obtuvo un posgrado en la Universidad de Legon en Ghana. Sebastian habla con fluidez francés, inglés, español y otros 5 idiomas africanos. Ha realizado investigaciones y dictado conferencias en Costa de Marfil, Ghana, España, Francia, Inglaterra, Canadá, Cuba y Colombia. Está involucrado en el desarrollo de varios proyectos comunitarios con impacto social y formador de jóvenes en África Occidental y Canadá en liderazgo y emprendimiento social. Es el fundador de Global Lead Foundation, una organización de África Occidental que opera en el campo del liderazgo, el espíritu empresarial y la educación como medida para luchar contra la inmigración ilegal, y cofundador de Longington, una organización sin fines de lucro que ofrece un programa con enfoque intergeneracional a personas mayores, jubilados y estudiantes internacionales. Es vicepresidente de Voz a Media, una estructura africana que lucha contra la inmigración ilegal de africanos a Europa y miembro de Convergencias de las Culturas. Lo dejo entonces con la palabra de Aka.
Gracias, Guillermo, y bueno, gracias también a Conan Alain y Greta que se prestan como voluntarios para la traducción. So we are going to start, like the topic I'm going to focus on is economy and society, creating cultural bridges between the South to humanize migration, and there is no global immigration crisis. Since the second half of the 20th century, the world is constantly affected by an incessant displacement of people, which reached its peak in 2015, dubbed by the media as a migration crisis. A report from UNHCR and IOM indicate that thousands of people have died or disappeared in an attempt to reach North America or Europe from third world countries or countries in the southern world, South and Central America, North and Sub-Saharan Africa. The number of displaced people in the world, estimated at 84.8 million in 2019, increased and reached a new high of 89.4 million in 2020. According to the UN World Migration Report 2022, people who are forced to leave their homes due to conflict, violence, disaster, also include refugees, asylum seekers, and internally displaced persons within their country of origin. That increase occurred despite widespread restriction on international travel and movement of migrants in the early stages of the corona pandemic. While the world is desperately trying to understand and seek solutions to stop the overwhelming and relentless human displacement, the idea of a migration crisis is totally moot. Rather, there is global geopolitical and migration policy crisis, which led to a construction of more barriers between borders and different countries. I argue that in order to understand the problems of mass migration, we need to create awareness, opening a window, a new window for migrants themselves to express their concerns, their needs and proposals, exposing their testimonies, their diverse experiences through narrative about border crossing and building cultural bridges across borders. Consequently, In this work, I will essentially focus on three important aspects that will support our understanding of the importance of considering cultural bridging in the comprehension and resolution of the supposedly global migration crisis. Firstly, I will highlight the characteristic of apparent migration crisis through data analysis. Secondly, I will explore the process of a migration of the people in displacement and disclose their various concerns and experiences. And lastly, I will discuss how building cultural bridges across borders is essential in resolving the global migration crisis. 1. Narrative and...
Perdón, acá un segundo. No está entrando la traducción al español. No se está haciendo. No sé si estaba previsto no hacerla simultáneo o hacerla después, pero se está haciendo al francés, pero no al español.
Okay.
Quizá Greta pueda trasladar por ahora al español. O alguien.
Alain, ça va? Tu nous suis? On ne peut pas t'entendre. No se escucha. Bueno.
Escucho
a
alguien en el canal de español hablando francés.
Bueno.
No hay nadie que esté transmitiendo en español. Si quieres hacerlo, no sé.
A ver.
¿Quién está hablando ahora? Tú estás traduciendo al francés.
Greta en francés y
bueno,
Alain
en
al español, sí.
Pero...
Sí.
Claro,
lo que pasa, claro, no lo estaba haciendo, él pensó que iba a decir todo junto después, no simultáneo.
No, ¿cómo va a ser eso? Ese es simultáneo. No.
Ok, ¿podemos seguir?
Bueno, por favor, no sé si quieren comenzar de nuevo.
Bueno.
Como ustedes quieran, pero o continuamos.
O mejor continuar como al punto 1, no sé, depende qué proponen. Seguimos.
Sí, a partir de aquí.
Bueno, seguimos a partir de narrative como número 1, okay. Narrative and statistical data on the migration crisis, the perception of crisis in global migration. The UN World Migration, in its 2022 report, indicates that the number of displaced people as of 2020 reached nearly 90 million. The statistics at the first glance are very alarming and raise even more concerns with a closed loop. In fact, the migrant crisis has been so far one of the most discussed issues and topics covered in the news in this current decade. Some recent cases are the Syrian refugees crisis, the migrant caravan fleeing from Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador to the US and Mexico borders, and the Afro-migrant crisis across the Mediterranean. There are millions of people fleeing persecution, poverty, violence, and a devastating crisis in their home countries who have died, gone missing, drowned, abused, raped, while attempting to reach a safer place, according to BBC News, March 4, 2016, and World Vision 2019. With respect to the arising state of crisis, there have been a significant increase of debate and analysis around the topic of migration over time across all disciplines to better understand the current global migration-related issues. issues, in a particular way, on migration of those from southern regions, African to Europe and Latin American to the US and Canada. Research on the issue has focused on mapping migration routes, estimating the magnitude of migration flows and studying smuggling and trafficking methods. Media, political statement, and government report put emphasis on problem to solution of illegal immigration and mass migration, and their effect on the receiving societies economically, politically, and culturally. Mass migration of southern region migrants as part of the migrant crisis is offered in media as a state of emergency, and its consequences have opened the debate, giving at the same time the opportunity to mass communication to weight its seriousness. Scholars such as Laura Sanfelipe Frias, Lisa Irene Hanime, and Mariana Patrona have tried to investigate through media coverage the Western world perception of migrant crisis. Laura and Lisa analysis of the representation of the migrant and refugee crisis shows that the media partially or does not necessarily depict the reality of the situation about the current migrant crisis. The objectivity and the impartiality of the representation and the reconstitution of crisis are therefore questioned. Sanfelipe Frias and Lisa Irene Hanine argue that the construction of reality is biased and respond to a set agenda, which influences the public opinion on a given social issue due to the large or excessive coverage based on the hit headlines. As commercial entities and business, the media sell more by playing on the sensational, referencing humans, Malcolm's, Igatua, and Entman, Sanfelipe Frias, and Haninem emphasize on how the choice made by journalists bearing the news on a specific matter highlights shapes the perception of the consumers, and in the case of a migrant crisis, contribute not only in foiling the idea of crisis, but also people's understanding and perception of a reality about migration issues and the way the migrants are seen by the receiving societies. It is vital to understand how the underlying mechanism of agenda setting, framing, and media bias can contribute to create negative and or alternatively positive images of refugees and migrants, and these way affect public opinion, political and civil mobilization, and migration policy outcomes. Moreover, the persistent scary images of extreme and sad scenes showing drawn migrant, helpless refugees, and dirty appearance of unhealthy migrants and abandoned children crying of hunger could not but inspire fear in the receiving community and trigger rejection and xenophobia. The above lines are illustrative of a discursive depiction of crisis related to the migration of those from the southern regions. The concepts or perceptions of crisis related to the contemporary migration phenomenon, as portrayed in political discourses and the media, is a concept of migrant crisis which extend the explanatory notions of crisis to fulfill some political agenda or to showcase the sensational nature of media. The media, by conditioning the public opinion, does not necessarily depict the realities involved in the migrant crisis, which prompts the question of whether the migrant in the northern region receiving community have the same understanding and perceptions of migration crisis. However, the mainstream of information do not always fully reflect the realm of the migrant crisis they claim to describe. It appears that the voice of the migrant from the southern regions and their experience of the migration crisis have been less emphasized. Consequently, I suggest that an analysis of the southern region migrants' experiences of migration, their experience of the crisis, is important to establish a balanced narrative of the global migrant crisis. Number 2, the silence migrant voice, how the southern regions migrant experience the global migration crisis. It is obvious that a lot of statistical data support the narrative of migrant crisis as seen in the official discourses and mainstream media. However, is that version of migrant crisis complete? Should have the migrant told their story? How would that sound? I argue that there is a better approach of analyzing the migrant crisis by digging into the perceptions of migrant crisis from the perspective of the migrant themselves. The connotation of crisis for migrants from the southern regions in the migration process to Europe and Northern America, US and Canada, cannot be exactly the same as how the migrant crisis is experienced and perceived by the receiving communities. The southern regions migrant experience the migration crisis in every single stage of the migration process, starting from the primary reasons behind the decision of leaving to the moment they establish themselves in their country of destination. Every day, people around the world make the most difficult decision of their life to leave their homes in the hope of finding a better and safer life. Almost all of us have the experience of leaving the place where we grew up without necessarily going any further than the neighboring village or the next town. Some people, on the other hand, have to leave a country for a short time or forever. There are many reasons why people from all over the world want to rebuild their life in another country. Some people leave to find a job or to go to school. Others are fleeing persecution or human rights violations such as torture. Millions are trying to escape armed conflict or other crisis or violent situation. Still, others no longer feel safe and may have been the target of violence solely because of who they are, what they do, or what they believe in. For example, because of their ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or political opinions. The above reasons are not only legitimate the decision for people to leave their homes and try to find safety elsewhere, but are reinforced by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in its following article, Article 3, 4, 5, 13, and 14, and I'm giving the quotation. Article 3, everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. 4, no one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. 5, no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. 13, everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state. Everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and to return to his country. 14, everyone has the right to seek and to enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution. This right may not be invoked in the case of prosecution generally arising from non-political crimes or from acts contrary to purposes and principles of the United Nations. Despite all the measures put in place supposedly to guarantee safety to everyone, it seems like the southern region's migrants not only face challenges starting from the very reason why they have to make the hard decision to leave their homes, but also suffer the denial of the fundamental human right, mostly stated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The primary reasons constitute by themselves the nature of the first stage of crisis the migrant experience: economic, social, political, humanitarian, and other type of crisis. Another stage of migration crisis the southern region's migrant face occurs during their journeys to safe places: human and sex trafficking, labor exploitation, slavery, rape, death, drowning, etc. Their journeys, which always begin with the hope of a better future, can take place under the signs of danger and fear. People are at risk of being trafficked or other forms of exploitation. Then, once arrived at the supposedly safe destination, usually in the northern region countries, Europe, US, and Canada, the southern region's migrants experience another stage of migrant crisis, which result from all the rejections of their basic rights as stated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the complexity of a system put in place to deny them asylum, or the way they are targeted and treated unfairly at the institutional level, and also in their encounter with individuals from receiving communities. Some are detained by the authorities as soon as they arrive in the new country. When they finally settle down and start a new life, many people face racism, xenophobia, and discrimination on a daily basis. At this point, my biggest concern is that the voice of the southern region migrant is not heard or has not really been taken into consideration in the construction of a narrative of migrant crisis and its resolution. Otherwise, the emphasis would have been put more on their experience than the geopolitical agenda as it appears in the political discourses and media coverage. I argue that in order to understand the problems of mass migration, we need to create awareness, opening a new window for migrants themselves to express their concerns, their needs, and proposals, exposing their testimonies, their diverse experiences through narrative about border crossing and building cultural bridges across borders. Number 3, building cultural bridges across borders to humanize migration. What is coherent about a cultural approach in dealing with immigration-related issues, and particularly with the migrant crisis? From ancient to modern era, migration has always been integrated in the human life. Before the concept of countries' borders were brought into immigration question, it is important to understand that migration is part of human lifestyle. Humanly speaking, it can be demonstrated that migration is a natural response or consequence of survival. For example, natural disasters, including drought, have always pushed people to relocate to a safer place in search of shelter, land to grow food, pasture land for the cattle. Also, in a state of wars and conflict, in order to stay alive, humans constantly migrate from one point to another, including in modern era. The situation of migration in many parts of the world, and in particular, way in the southern region countries, has worsened recently. Countries known to be previously hosting most economic migrants and refugees have become refugees or originated regions themselves, as reported in L'Afrique et ses réfugiés, le journal des réfugiés africains, June 20 in 1975. For many years, colonization in terms of the empires and current cultural neocolonization have weakened any idea of development, communication, and local identity that respect the diversity and cultural richness of vast regions in Southern America and Africa at the cost of human lives. Furthermore, human migration can be explained by many aspects of human life, as mentioned previously. Beside the first reason of human displacement, it appears that migration is also a lifestyle. It is the case of the Roma people in the Central and Western Europe who live of small trade and performing art. The Tuareg people in the African Sahara, Fulani people who are shepherds, the Inuits and Algonquins in the Arctic region of Northern America who live of hunting and fishing. From a sociological point of view, migration has always been part of human life and will always be. And it carries along with cultural aspects through the expansion of foreign languages, cuisines, fashion, literature, art, and politics. People migrate and they move along with their culture, which allows cultural exchanges. People in the northern region countries and other parts of the world enjoy the food, music, and rhythm from southern region countries thanks to immigration. From this perspective, immigration is positive in nurturing and enriching human relationships. Therefore, emphasis should be put more on building cultural bridges to humanize immigration instead of constructing a narrative of crisis associated with immigration. What does it mean to build cultural bridges to humanize immigration? If nations, after suffering consequences of international crisis, wars, genocide, slavery, and all kinds of injustice, discrimination, and racism, decided to ratify the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it is because they have understood that life is sacred and that humans should be at the center of everything. And to avoid injustice and violence, efforts should be made in creating safer living environment and relationship between humans by promoting peace and human values through the recognition of cultural diversity. From a personal and humanist perspective, I argue that a human and humanist approach to the resolution of the global migration crisis is significant. It implies reflection on how the migrant crisis could be mitigated through building cross-border cultural bridges. This requires views beyond political agendas and immigration policies. It requires a reflection on cultural diversity, values, innovation can open the world to a future of possibilities and opportunities for all human beings in the respect of their dignity. This opens also the opportunity for the world to celebrate and cultivate what unites and brings us together. As such, people and migrants from the southern region countries should be given the opportunity to contribute to the construction of a better world with their cultures. Conclusion. All human beings have the rights of life and protection. We share responsibility in creating a safe living place for everyone, regardless of our differences. My analysis of the migration of the southern region people to northern regions can be explained first, historically, by the fact that throughout all period of the history, there have been a constant political, social, economical, religious, and natural instability pushing the population outside their homes to the nearest place for safety, in this case to Europe, the US, and Canada. However, this is not enough to treat immigration-related issues as a crisis that only portray the experience of the receiving community. As a matter of fact, if there should be any crisis related to immigration, the migrants are those who suffer the biggest aspect of it based on their experience of immigration, starting from their country of origin to their country of destination. The global migrant crisis that we are experiencing is not due to migration itself, but to the lack of adequate immigration policies and other geopolitical tensions. Therefore, to address the crisis, solutions must be implemented from the perspective of the South-South cultural bridge. This implies an approach based on the recognition of the rights of migrants, the promotion of inclusion and equal opportunities, as well as the international cooperation of all those involved to face the challenges of migration. Again, it is difficult to talk about migrant crisis when we know all the economical, social, and cultural contribution migrants make in their country of destination. In terms of concrete actions at the international level, immigration-related issues must be addressed globally at their root causes, such as poverty, unemployment, lack of opportunities, and violence. These include an emphasis on economic and social development in countries of origin, as well as improving education and health systems. Equal opportunities for migrants must be promoted, ensuring that they are allowed access to basic health, education, and employment services. In addition, regional cooperation should be promoted to improve cross-border trafficking and system for the protection of the right of migrants. Ultimately, it is important to foster cultural exchanges between countries of the South to encourage mutual understanding and respect, as well as to promote a positive narrative of migration. This must include support for dialogue effort between countries, particularly those whose leaders recognition the importance of solidarity, cooperation between people. This will help foster mutual respect and collaboration to address migration challenges and achieve better integration of migrants in host countries. Regardless of being African, Latino, or from any part of the world, immigration should be seen as a whole that involves people, but also skills, invention, sciences, and culture. From a humanist perspective, building cultural bridges and promoting unity and peace in our vision of the world is how we can resolve any global crisis, and particularly the global migrant crisis. There is no immigration crisis. The only crisis we are facing globally is the inadequacy of immigration policies and laws. From the point of view of an African, with knowledge of the fact, my argument cannot be, nor does it claim to be official, but it has legitimacy due to what I witnessed and experienced as a migrant and refugee. I think that this world established system is literally collapsing given its premature aging of social structures and its Europeanizing and capitalist standards of living. We have the energy and ideas of a new century to suggest that rehumanizing the world is the key solution to global crisis. Thank you. So I'm ready for comments and questions.
Perdón, están pidiendo participación. Lo que creo que ocurre es que el canal en español todavía estaba terminando la traducción, pero no sé si ya se pueden abrir los micrófonos para las preguntas.
O sea, se puede como parar y yo de todas maneras puedo como tomar las preguntas en español también y lo que sea. Entonces, si empezaron como la parte española un poco tarde, entonces podemos parar ahí y tomar preguntas o comentarios. Alors, je comprends et désolé pour un peu le décalage aussi. Et donc, si vous avez des questions, même générales en ce qui concerne la crise migratoire globale qui touche et l'Europe et l'Amérique, on peut en discuter. Je peux le partager, Virginia. Yo puedo como compartir luego si quiere.
D'accord. Ben oui, je suis sûre. Oui, oui, mais j'entendais rien. Ni en espagnol, ni en... Oui, oui,
Oh, c'est bien dommage. OK.
j'attends.
Alors, si vous voulez, je peux faire un peu comme un résumé et en français et en espagnol pour que les gens comprennent en général les points sur lesquels j'essayais les points que je voudrais peut-être mettre en exergue. Alors, je touche le point qu'il faut créer des ponts culturels entre les pays du Sud pour humaniser les migrations. Autrement dit, pour moi, et c'est ma plus grande hypothèse, il n'y a pas de crise d'immigration, il n'y a que des crises il n'y a que des politiques d'immigration ou des lois d'immigration qui sont en crise ou en inadéquation avec les réalités des mouvements et des déplacements des gens. Voilà. Alors, la remarque sur la question, on a commencé à parler de crise globale d'immigration dans la deuxième moitié du XXe siècle, où le monde était constamment touché par un déplacement incessant des personnes qui a atteint son point culminant en 2015. Et par là, les médias ont commencé à utiliser la terminologie crise migratoire. Et donc, dans les rapports, par exemple, de HCR et de l'Organisation mondiale de l'immigration, on indique que plusieurs milliers de personnes sont mortes ou disparues, tentant de rejoindre soit l'Europe ou l'Europe à travers la mer Méditerranée, ou aussi l'Amérique du Nord en provenance des pays du sud de l'Amérique. Et ce nombre de personnes déplacées était estimé à environ 84 millions en 2019 et ont atteint facilement 90 000 en 2020. Comme quoi, en l'espace d'un an, il y a eu près de 6 millions ou plus de déplacés dans le monde. Et ça, c'est énorme. Alors, selon le rapport des Nations Unies de 2022, les personnes qui sont forcées de quitter leur foyer en raison de conflits, violences, etc., les réfugiés, les demandeurs d'asile, ces personnes-là viennent des régions du Sud, c'est-à-dire de l'Afrique et de l'Amérique latine. OK? Et cette augmentation même a continué malgré la pandémie du coronavirus. Alors, le monde tente désespérément de comprendre et de trouver des solutions pour mettre fin à ces déplacements écrasants et incessants. L'idée d'une crise est tout à fait discutable de mon point de vue et c'est ce que je tente de comprendre. Parce que ce qu'on appelle crise, en fait, selon la perception des pays qui accueillent, OK, ce n'est qu'une partie infime de ce que réellement les migrants eux-mêmes vivent. OK? Et donc, c'est la partie visible de l'iceberg, comme on pourrait le dire. Mais la partie immergée serait d'abord les raisons premières ou les raisons principales qui forcent les personnes à sortir de leur pays. Et ça, c'est la première partie de la crise que vivent ces migrants. La deuxième partie de la crise, c'est pendant le processus même de leur déplacement, c'est-à-dire tout ce qu'ils vont traverser comme trafic humain, trafic sexuel, esclavage, exploitation même laborale. On se rappelle qu'en Italie, lorsqu'il y a eu la pandémie, tout était fermé. Avant ça, on disait, il y avait trop d'immigrants, Et du coup, avec la pandémie, il n'y avait plus personne pour travailler dans les champs de tomates. On a régularisé près de 40 000 immigrants. Comme quoi... ¿Aló?
Sí, tenemos como en unos poquitos minutos, no sé si tenemos posibilidad, Gabriel, de pasar a los que quieran continuar a una sala más pequeña, el intercambio.
Ya está creada la sala, la verdad que excepcional, muy buena la presentación, muy interesante el tema. Aquellos que quieran seguir acá conversando pueden elegir ir a salas para grupos pequeños, bajar hasta encontrar la sala 1 y luego unirse, porque tenemos que dar lugar a la siguiente presentación en horario. ¿Puede ser?
Juan Aviño, si está hablando, no se escucha. Oh, perdón. Okay.
Ahí finalicé las interpretaciones, todos los traductores pueden traducir esto. Para que quienes quieren seguir conversando con Aka, por favor, lo hagan.
¿Y en qué sala porque hay como 5 salas? No sé.
Room 1.
Okay.
Move to room 1, please. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Merci Sébastien.
Thank you, Aka.